we have a panel. Giovanni Mongarelli is going to lead our panel in mainstreaming gender in policy and regulations linked to the digital economy. There's our panelists. But I want to say something about Giovanna. As CEO and co-founder of the two international companies, M&C Consulting and MC2, you play the digital role of technology and advisor, and you're an entrepreneur. You've been really driving policy and change for many, many years in Canada. I'm so thrilled to have you be the speaker and moderator of this panel. So welcome, Giovanna. Be sure to check her full profile in LinkedIn because it will blow your mind and turn your hair purple, I think. All right. So first, what's your power word for the year?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Patty, for your very kind words. I am delighted and honored to be here. My power word is actually a few words. It's basically go with the flow.
Go
right?
with the flow. All right.
Go with the flow. Don't try and force anything this year. Go with the flow. It's all going to work and be awesome.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I am delighted to be here. Hello from Seattle, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Cloud Mainstreaming Gender and Policy Regulations linked to Digital Economy Power Panel. How's that for an early morning panel? Fantastic. All right, so we all know gender equality is a fundamental human right, and it's a keystone of prosperous, modern economy that provides sustainable, inclusive growth. According to the World Economic Forum, the female economy is said to be the world's largest emerging market, with the potential to add $12 trillion to the global GDP by 2025. That's in just 3 years. In that context, the tech industry, our industry, or at least its 20 largest players, will likely continue to close the gender gap in the year ahead. That's the good news. Deloitte Global predicts this year that large global tech firms on average will reach nearly 33% overall women representation in the workforce, again in 2022, up slightly more than 2 percentage points from 2019. This is because they've implemented policies and regulations that enable incremental growth, which is bearing fruit, albeit a little bit slowly. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we've all experienced, accelerated the need for people to be digitally networked. So education, employment, and other activities migrated almost exclusively online overnight. While the big tech companies continue to innovate due to pre-existing gender equality programs, many women-owned tech SMEs, so small, medium enterprises, and women employees were not so lucky. Those without digital connection were left out, and as a result, many livelihoods were lost. Globally, there are 433 million women who are not connected to information technology devices, and 165 million less women who are owners of a mobile phone in comparison to men. There are also 250 million more men who use the internet compared to women. Much can and must be done to support the mainstreaming of gender equality by companies and governments alike, so that women are supported at all levels, especially in the tech industry, which is what we are here to discuss today. I am delighted and honored to be moderating this power panel over the next 30 minutes alongside women leaders in tech who will share their insights and experiences on how digital transformation can create opportunities for the economic empowerment of women, and how to mainstream policies and regulations with communities and companies to achieve greater gender equality in the digital economy. To get this started, I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists. Kicking it off with Lolly Gaitan, Program Officer of Digital Inclusion and coordinates the Equals Global Partnership to bridge the gender digital divide. So the Bridge the Gender Digital Divide is an initiative with over 100 partners co-founded by the International Telecommunications Union, the International Trade Center, UN Women, GSMA, and UN University. So impressive. She has over 13 years experience working with quantitative and qualitative methods to analyze international policy and development, partnerships, relations, and specialized in technical assistance to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals with a focus on SDG 5, gender equality. Next, we have the fabulous Lani Cosette, Senior Director and Chief of Staff for Microsoft's new UN Affairs Division. As the Senior Director and Chief of Staff for Microsoft UN, she is building a team to support and promote innovation in how private sector works with the UN, governments, and other actors to deliver greater impact. The team is focused on advancing progress towards a more accessible and equitable digital environment and a healthier planet, enabling the UN and its agencies to achieve more using computer and data science. Next, we have the one and only Susie Snyder, co-founder of Tango Future. Susie is an expert on nuclear weapons with over 2 decades working on the intersection between nuclear weapons and human rights. For the past decade, Susie has worked with financial sector actors to stigmatize nuclear weapons. Susie served as president of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons from 2014 to 2021. This was also during negotiations on the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and when the organization won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. Susie is a co-founder of Tango Future, which stands for Technology, Arts, and a New Global Objective for the Future, and an SNS Innovation Ambassador and an occasional contributor to the Vatican Security COVID Task Force. What an impressive panel of powerful women. So perfect for our discussion today. Now on to our first power panel question. Okay, women make up a little over half the world's population, but their contribution to measured economic activity, growth, and well-being is far below its potential, with serious macroeconomic consequences. The challenges of growth, job creation, and inclusion are closely intertwined, as we know. My question to you, panelists, is what are the inherent and pervasive structural inequalities that is leading to and enabling gender inequality? Okay, so let's start with you, Lolly. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So much for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. So yeah, I mean, I would say that it's just only one question.
Oh, Lolly?
Yes?
Sorry, we're having a bit of a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's just a little bit difficult to hear. Yes? Just keep going. All good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, no, I was mentioning that thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm pleased to be with these distinguished panelists. I would say that there is only one answer to that, and it's we've been living in an unequal world since the beginning. And mostly for the tech industry, there are many tools that we need to apply as a community, but also from the government, from the different stakeholders to play field the imbalance women and men into the tech industry. I'm not sure if you're listening to me. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Okay, and now Lonnie, I would love to hear from you about how companies are participating in bridging the gender divide.
Well, we've really taken a good look at how to reach the last mile. Our focus is, it's interesting, Giovanna, to hear the stats that you raised. I think we're focused on the 3 billion who are unconnected to the internet and trying to come up with solutions, scalable solutions, so that we can really have an impact. So we've really focused on trying to build strong multi-stakeholder networks, defining projects that can be scaled, especially in Africa recently. So to give you one example, we launched this program in partnership with USAID pretty recently. Basically, the model includes trying to reach women at home in recognition that there's this enormous opportunity cost, especially for women. And the idea of being able to access connectivity and meaningful connectivity to access services is pretty high impact. But in order to do this, we have partnered with an ISP last mile provider, as well as local NGOs, which has been our model in multiple countries. So this model, I think, has had great impact in Ghana, and we are ready to launch it in other countries as well, including some of the least developed countries in Malawi and Mozambique. So I'll look forward to, I know there's another question later about, you know, what kind of regulatory environment will really support and be able to help scale that project. So I will provide some more answers around that question.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you for everything that you're doing. Okay, now Susie, I'd love to hear from you about how you see governments working to enact greater gender equality regulations.
Well, I think, and I'm pretty confident that Lonnie would agree with me here, there's a great disparity between where and how different governments approach issues around gender and gender equality. And some are looking at advancing, they're taking the lead, and they're doing great things. And you see this in different initiatives that they've put forward. Things like requiring regular reporting around leadership in companies. What are the CEOs? Are they men? Are they women? Are they transgender? What are the gender breakdown? What is the pay breakdown within the company itself? So not just at the top level, but are employees making the same regardless of their gender? Is that information accessible? Is it not? Is it usable? Is it not? And governments are, sometimes governments are supporting this because they are, for example, taking forward, feminist policies on board, where they see that their best security in the world, their best foot forward in the world is really about finding equality, and gender equality is one of the first ways to take that on. So governments, I think they're doing all sorts of different things. I personally think that some of the initiatives around making information available and available especially to the investment community is really important, and that is potentially transformative. But it's not harmonized right now. It's not uniform. And that's one of the challenges that I think we have is to create that. Like, transparency helps us. Transparency helps us build equality, because if we're not transparent, then we don't know what people are talking about. There's a great saying within the human rights community: nothing about us without us. So when it comes to negotiating new policies, new opportunities, we also need to make sure that those who are at the table in those negotiations represent the communities that they say they are, and represent the communities that they want to see. This week in the Netherlands, I'm in the Netherlands, so for me it's a night. So good evening. And this week in the Netherlands, there's a LinkedIn campaign going on where a lot of professionals are changing their name to Peter, because here in the Netherlands, which is historically very progressive and has a very equal economy, one would think, or they like to say, there are more CEOs named Peter than there are women CEOs. So what people are saying, hey, we can change this, we can do this. The first thing we need is information to share that with one another, and then we demand seats at tables and policies that can carry forward, and transparency is a good way to start.
Thank you so much, Susie. Wow, the Peter campaign. I'm going to check that out after this panel. So I want to take a step back, right? We're talking about a highly complex, multi-tiered issue around, systemic gender inequality that's political, it's financial, it's societal, it's all pervasive in every country of the world. What does gender mainstreaming mean? Like, in really simple words for each of you, what does that actually mean to you? So Lonnie, starting with you, from a company perspective, what does that mean?
I would say, I think it means better understanding the kinds of issues that have a greater or different impact on women. As a company, we're hyperscale cloud computing company, so data science matters. And I would say, being able to understand the question of mainstreaming, just go back to the data and,
Right.
be focused on disaggregating the data by gender. It starts with that, to understand
Right. So
the
it's
problem.
about learning, right? Like first figuring it out. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And going back to you, Lolly, how would you define gender mainstreaming?
Yes, I mean, coming from the international community, and as ITU is the UN agency technical for telecommunications and technology, I would say that to have mainstream gender in digital policies and regulations is basically to have built a gender responsive digital ecosystem. So it means that gender is at the heart of the laws, the policies, the regulations, the plans that countries are putting in place or are designing, but not only in the text of these, let's say, agreements or regulations, but also that women should have a voice since the beginning. So at the design of these policies and regulations, and also through the implementation of these regulations. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Lolly. Okay, and Susie, what does gender mainstreaming mean to you in your world?
Well, it's all about asking the question: how does this, whatever this is, because in all our worlds it's a little different. How does this impact women? How does it impact men? How does it impact girls? And how does it impact boys? And now increasingly, how does it impact non-binary individuals as well? So it's really asking, what are the impacts of whatever it is that we're trying to develop, that we're trying to do? And when we mainstream gender, we're mainstreaming the thinking, that we're bringing it from the very beginning, the reminder that we ask these questions so that we don't accidentally design algorithms that lead to increased targeting of women for sexually explicit photos or something like that. We ask the questions that help give us inclusive policies. And for me, it's always that starts at 5. You've got 5 fingers on your hand. Ask 5 questions. How does it impact women? How does it impact men? How does it impact girls? How does it impact boys? And how does it impact the non-binary community? If we can do that, that would be amazing.
Great. Well, I feel like I'm learning so much on this panel already. Okay, so a lot of us are sitting here thinking, all right, I'm starting to understand what this is. I'm starting to get what gender mainstreaming is. I understand the relevance and why it's important. Now the question I'm asking myself is, who are the people in charge that can actually make a difference for gender mainstreaming? So who are the people that can actually implement policies within your organizations that can actually make a change? Who are those people? What do they look like? Are they all called Peter, or are they someone else? Right. So let's start with you, Lolly.
Question from ITU, because we are a member-driven organization, so we represent kind of the head of states, especially the ministries of ICTs, but we work closely with countries that have ministries that are women. And we are getting a lot of experiences and data from them to replicate in other countries. So I would say those that can really shape and take the lead are in, from ITU's perspective, is of course the governments, the ministries, but also the regulators. And And share experiences is key. We are actually doing that through supporting least developed countries, through experiences of women leading ministries of ICTs in other countries, in particular from the global north. And these discussions of taking the lead or shaping the policies can take years. I think that's something that when we are starting to do some capacity building to policy officers, especially in women now, we are doing it in Ethiopia and Burundi. We can see that we go and we are hoping that we can change these policies or these regulations in 1 month, but it's never happened. So it would take years until you really get the voices, not only from the leaders, which are these ministries that can lead the conversation, but also the voices from the stakeholders on the ground, which are mostly actually from private sector, but also civil society, because it's key to have the women's associations that are trying to raise their voices on the ground. So we need to open the doors for them as well to check these policies. Yeah. So that's from my side. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, now back over to you, Lonnie. Who is responsible for making these policies within Microsoft and your organizations?
It's a great question. I mean, we are blessed with a lot of resources at Microsoft, a huge commitment to our government affairs teams, but also colleagues I'm working with from our philanthropies team, as well as those who are working on building the scalable model, which I think has huge high impact for women and girls in some of the countries that I was describing. So I would say, well, two things. It's really a combination of people, but here's me. I'm raising my hand. To the gender data point, I realized, over the last 6 months, I began to understand how significant and important that is. If you look at the governments of Rwanda and Chile, guess what? Women presidents, and guess what? There's a better understanding of the policy and the questions in those countries. So, I probably contacted 30 people at Microsoft. I said, well, how do we do this? Like, do we have a data set? And I'm really happy. I mean, we start small, but recognizing the importance of gender data. And I realized we had 6 years of data where we had surveyed women, girls, boys, and men on digital safety kinds of issues. And we release this report every year. And I said, well, but we've already. I realized the data set includes this breakdown by gender, and so we're going to release the data set, make it public, accessible to researchers, others, in a couple of weeks. And that means more understanding can happen on the gender data front. And then on the second point, what can I do? Again, it's working with others, but a huge privilege to be in this position to have a UN Affairs team and a UN Affairs office. And sometimes problems require, you need to include people from all different sectors. There's certainly the policy question. There's practical questions about how you scale to actually build these high impact models. So, and I encourage anyone listening who's interested or involved in trying to, build and encourage scalable models for last mile situations. I spent 2 days on a retreat with international financiers, with people from UNDP, from a couple of missions, and others, and last mile providers as well. And we just put our head together and kind of talked through a model of what works, what doesn't, and we came up with all kinds of things that need to change. And so now I have a blueprint for action for the next several years, but it starts with building those groups.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much. And Susie, back over to you. Who is responsible?
Oh, well, see, I work in international affairs for the most part, so I hold everybody responsible and accountable. It's all of these different things. There are so many potential stakeholders here. Whether it's those who are looking to be service providers for last mile, that's an incredible stakeholder group, and I love that. Even when we start small, we have the opportunity for scaling big. So I've been looking at these issues for longer than I like to admit in public, and I remember when we kind of pushed some things through the UN Security Council. And this was way back in the early part of this century. And I could take out my cane. But what we were doing is we're saying, okay, what we need to do is we just need to say, let's just start with the very basic question. If we're talking about, we wanted to promote, coming out of the World Conference on Women, like all these world conferences on women, we wanted to figure out what's the next thing we can do to kind of promote women's involvement. Well, let's get them recognized at the highest security level, like discussion on the planet. So we did. And so we started really small with a nice little statement out of Namibia saying, hey, women's security concerns are national security concerns. And it led to a Security Council resolution. And now there's a whole bunch of Security Council resolutions. And there's a community of practice that is global and powerful that asks these same questions about mainstreaming. And I see it happening. And you ask who's responsible here. I see it happening everywhere. And that to me is truly transformative. And it is what's one of the things that's creating a society that I am so much more excited about living in and raising, my kid in, is this society with more opportunity for everyone. So I'm sorry I didn't really answer your question.
Oh, no, that was great. That was really, really great. And in fact, it leads really nicely into my next question. And so, since we started this panel, we've covered, the global context of what the issue is. We've talked about defining gender mainstreaming. So like, what is it? We've talked about who are the people that are responsible for gender mainstreaming. Right. So we kind of have a sense of like, okay, well, these are the problems and these are the issues and, here's where we're going. So now I would love for us to look at what are actual gender mainstreaming policies that each of your organizations are working on, or government organizations are working on to enable greater gender equality. Now, I am Canadian, and so I'm going to start with a plug for the Canadian government because we do a lot about this. I'm just saying, sorry guys, but like Canada is very, very forward. We have a feminist foreign policy agenda. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is a self-declared feminist. In 2015, he brought to power the first 50-50 gender parity cabinet and has since maintained that gender parity. And so we've seen at the political level great efforts to have equal representation of women and men, and indications from the people at the most powerful level in our government that that's a priority. Furthermore, from a financial perspective, our government has also made statements financially about the value of gender mainstreaming by, for example, putting a feminist lens on foreign spending. So, for example, the government contributed $300 million towards the Equality Fund. It was one of the founding partners of the Equality Fund in Canada, which is presently the largest self-sustaining fund for gender equality in the world, aiming to reach $1 billion. And actually, just last week, the Canadian government launched a $25 million women's entrepreneurship fund. So like women-led SMEs, right? The ones that are at most risk, right? Because of COVID. And in general, right? There's $25 million for them to just apply for funding from the government. Be like, I have this company looking for money and there's $25 million, right? So this shows the different priorities. So I am going to stop there and invite each of you to share, what are, from your perspectives, some of those gender mainstreaming policies that we can discuss. And so we're going to start with you, Susie, and then go to Lolly and then Lonnie.
Well, one of the things that we're doing with Tango Futures to really bring out this idea that as we create policy, as we continue to build policy, and we spend a lot of time, a lot of our members, a lot of our partners are in the AI field. And so what we're doing is looking at how do we ensure that they're having regular conversations with those who might be impacted differently than they think. So what we're doing is we have a commitment to a broad, diverse representation, both within our leadership as well as within our membership. And the goal is to facilitate the creation of policy across, again, through many different stakeholders. We work with a lot of different stakeholder groups and creating policies in different arenas. So some that are looking at government policies, some that are looking at expanding their corporate policies around diversity and inclusion. And what we do is make sure that those who are traditionally marginalized and underrepresented are heard from before those policies are finalized. And I think that's what we've seen, is that we don't need to argue this, that it's something people want. And because they've seen that from their own experience, it's a win-win. And I think that's, to me, that's really exciting. It's nice to be in a conversation where we're not having a quite intense, binary argument, but instead finding cooperative solutions, because the goal here is to build something better for everyone. And that's where I'll leave that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susie. All right, Lolly, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Giovanna. So, look, I think from ITU's perspective, digital policies really, when they mainstream gender, they are creating opportunities for everyone, but in particular after COVID for the women workers and entrepreneurs. So they are getting more access to markets, more knowledge, more opportunities. So the goal of ITU, and of course with its members, is to create this gender-friendly digital ecosystem. And we are doing it from different perspectives. The first one is we are doing an assessment on the digital policies linked to the digital economy. And here we have identified 5 main pillars, or 5 main digital kind of groups of policies that should be influenced or mainstreamed through gender. The first ones are the digital technology. So, of course, the access of women and girls to the digital technology, the connectivity and security, everything related to cybersecurity and online safety. The second pillar for mainstream policies for the digital economy are all those related to digital skills. And it means that, of course, trying to open more opportunities for women and girls, access to technical and professional studies, university, etc. Then the third pillar that is very key and it's very challenging in some countries is the financial inclusion component.
Yeah.
It is the availability of access for the women, especially women entrepreneurs, the digital banking and digital payment systems. We are currently having some projects in LDCs where they don't have any e-payment systems accepted by the governments. And this is our role, trying to make them understand the need of these regulations and to open the borders for these systems to come into the country so women can start exporting their products, can start participating in e-commerce schemes. Then the fourth pillar is, of course, entrepreneurship and leadership. And this is like one of the closest pillars as well for ITU. So we always support and promote women leaders or women in senior management positions in technology companies, open new networks and platforms, etc. And the last but not least is the digital infrastructure and services. So to make these infrastructure and services available, universal and affordable. That is very important because unfortunately in the global south, the fees are very high for women and others to connect. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Lonnie, over to you. And then we're going to move into just some closing statements.
Great. Well, I was so happy to hear, Lolly. Everything on your list is on my wish list as well. So we're already working together, but it's amazing when you're able to build these partnerships. So I guess a lot of what I have to say is very similar. I think it really starts with the premise that closing the gender digital divide really does matter, and being able to provide meaningful access that is affordable first it's a recognition, which then builds to the political will. And then we need to get, I think, governments and international financial institutions to rethink and innovate their finance models, consider, blended finance, perhaps localized finance, rethinking how to address the significant cost of capital in the countries that desperately need access faster and first. So once we get the funding in place, then we have to think about, it's interesting, I think the policies are actually quite holistic. You have to think about creating the environment where we can be able to deliver that meaningful access and not have it be interrupted. So that requires it's not even necessarily gender related. You start with the premise that you're trying to reach and close the gender divide, but you end with focusing on anti-corruption, customs, trade, thinking about energy access to energy. So that means rethinking spectrum policies and being able to create an environment where all of the players in this ecosystem can succeed and they don't face roadblocks. That's my wish list.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lonnie. And everyone, thank you. This concludes our power panel. I'm going to invite each one of the speakers to say if you have any closing words or remarks, even if it's just a word of thanks. You've got 10 seconds. Lonnie, we're going to start with you, then go to Lolly, and then Susie. Lonnie.
I just thank everyone for all the enthusiasm and energy. When I logged on 15 minutes early, there was, it's just, you're leaving a good start to the weekend with a lot of great energy. And I certainly feel energized in the work that I've been doing a lot from my kitchen table. So thank you.
TGIF. Yes, it is the weekend. Okay, Lolly.
Oh, no, I think my last word is stay tuned, because ITU will launch soon this year for policymakers on how to mainstream gender in the digital economy. So I think there you will see a very comprehensive product to apply from the different stakeholders and for everyone. Thanks.
Great. And Lolly, do people know how to get access to that book?
Yes, it will be publicly available once it's published.
Okay. So maybe if you could post in the chat a link to wherever they'll be able to find that, that would be great for our viewers. And then Susie.
Shirley Chisholm said, if they won't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I am so grateful to the Women in Cloud community, because what you all are doing is you're building chairs for everyone. So thank you all very much. It's been great to be here.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone participating. Have a wonderful, wonderful summit.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone in that panel. You were amazing. It was really, I just want to say thank you to all of you in that panel for all you're doing in the world, because that's the big call out to me, is that there are women like you who are, that we don't really hear about every day. And here you are just demonstrating how to lead in that space and how to make change. And so I love it, because you're the accountability piece. And so thank you very much.